pleasure to be here. Thank you again to Ideagen for the opportunity to speak. I don't know about you, but the confluence of discussion throughout the day has just been incredible. Loads of connectivity. It's been truly humbling. For those that I wasn't able to meet last night, my name is Robert Gilpin. I work for KPMG. You may wonder what an audit, tax and advisory firm has to do with accelerating solutions to the Sustainable Development Goals. Well, please allow me a few minutes to explain. I'm the global lead of KPMG's International Development Institute. My role is to drive the work that we do with the multilateral development banks, the UN system, the bilateral donors like USAID, and the non-profits all around the world. So you'll probably be aware that KPMG, or you won't be aware, KPMG's been an actor in international development for over 20 years. And my role, while the firm commonly thinks of us as that audit, tax and advisory firm, I tend to think of the work that we do with our clients in two major buckets. So the first is helping international organizations to run effectively and efficiently. So ultimately, they can put more of their donor dollars back into the programs that they're looking to support. So that could be helping the CIO in technology acquisition, could be helping the HR function in its strategy, it could be helping the CFO in finance, risk, and treasury. The second bucket of support that we provide is supporting these institutions to deliver programmatically so that our development clients either to help them to deliver directly or to on the financing of public or private projects. So we help development institutions from strategy through implementation through to measuring the results of the programs and the impacts of those programs that they're looking to deploy around the world. Now, since the establishment of the Sustainable Development Goals back in 2015, we've seen ever-increasing interest in the SDGs from the private sector in support of attaining those goals. As any New Yorker will tell you, and in spite of my accent, I consider myself one of those. I've been here 17, 18 years now. The last 2 weeks of September in New York are absolute mayhem. If you're planning on visiting, stay well clear during the whole month of September. What many people don't know is historically, the number of events going on around the UN General Assembly has been in the region of a couple of hundred events. So this is civil society, private sector, public sector, UN coming together to talk. However, over the past year or two, the volume of events has just snowballed. Last year, well, the most recent September, that went up to over 570 events. Now, while size doesn't necessarily equate to substance, a large number of those events are being convened by the private sector, and they're really driving a lot of the discussion. So one very, very good event that we attended this year was with an organization that you might well know, Microsoft. And this year they hosted an event around the application of artificial intelligence in a development context. Very fascinating discussion, but they got all the major international UN organizations there talking about how they could apply AI in a UN context, either in the headquarters or in the field. We at KPMG sponsored New York Climate Week and hosted a number of events, one of which was a 2-day innovation workshop with UNFCCC's Global Innovation Hub. And that was focused on generating ideas of how to work with cities to convert their climate and sustainability needs into market opportunities. So I think I probably need to speak with Jeff shortly after on that one. Okay. The private sector really is stepping forward, not just to take part, but actually to lead discussions in a meaningful way. Now, if the UN General Assembly is where the world comes to address the global development agenda, then the World Bank and IMF annual meetings, which just took place in Morocco, is where the world comes to discuss how to finance the global development agenda. So I just returned from the annual meetings last week in Morocco. They did an incredible job post-earthquake to make everything happen. They're incredibly proud to host such a prestigious global event, and they did a great job. And during the continued discussions, there was this ongoing dialogue around the array of challenges that face us in the international community. You heard about the increase in climate-related disasters that we've heard about today, biodiversity loss, I don't think we've talked about too much today, but that came high on the agenda, widening of economic inequalities, both within countries and across countries, the conflicts in Ukraine and very sadly, the Middle East, and the ongoing global inflation. Now, indeed, there's a term that's emerged in international development this year to describe such issues, polycrises, and I'm sure you've all heard of that phrase, but of course, the rising of these events at the same time will only make financing and attaining the Sustainable Development Goals more difficult. When you consider the overseas development assistance amount each year is a little over 200 billion, whereas the annual needs to achieve the SDGs are between 1.4 and 3 trillion. So the ODA numbers seem strikingly inadequate. If we look at the reconstruction costs of Ukraine alone, those costs are estimated to be upwards of 477 billion over 10 years. Then there's the reconstruction efforts following the devastating Turkish earthquake. The list goes on. The scale of change is absolutely huge. Recognizing the urgency of our collective action, the incoming World Bank Group President, AJ Banga, who of course came from the private sector at MasterCard, has already realigned the mission of the World Bank Group. I'm sure many of you heard about this. They've shifted from creating a world free of poverty to creating a world free of poverty on a livable planet. And it's a crucial distinction. As the president of the World Bank said, if we're going to realize the ambition of the Paris Climate Agreement and stay within 1.5 degrees, all while achieving the SDGs, there's a real need to vastly increase the scale and pace of change. I'm going to run a quick video to give you a sense of the kind of work we do in this space.
In a crisis, how do you protect the most vulnerable in society? When the COVID-19 pandemic swept across the world, the government of Côte d'Ivoire had to act quickly, implementing not just emergency public health measures, but also programs to help address the rapidly unfolding economic impact and its effect on the poorest members of the population. In 2020, the government of Côte d'Ivoire leveraged $75 million in funding from the World Bank to support an emergency package of measures, providing humanitarian support for those most in need. Over the first 8 months of the project, more than $23 million of aid successfully reached over 194,000 households. By June 2022, over 1 million households received help with electricity costs through the social electricity tariff. Since then, over $6 million has been allocated to over 20,000 workers whose jobs were made redundant by the pandemic. And over 400,000 vulnerable households received financial support. KPMG in Côte d'Ivoire worked alongside the relevant ministries to maximize the impact of the fund, including how to identify the most vulnerable households, what forms government aid should take, and how to help ensure funds were distributed fairly, with the right controls to help prevent fraud. Drawing on professionals' global experience enabled the rapid development of strategy, eligibility criteria, and processes to help make sure relief reached those who needed it urgently, without delay. Designed and initially supported by KPMG in Côte d'Ivoire, ongoing controls are in place to help ensure transparency in how the fund is administered, building trust and confidence that help is distributed equitably. With strong governance and KPIs in place, the government of Côte d'Ivoire is laying the foundations for sustained economic recovery, and the impact is already clear to see.
Examples of how KPMG is trying to be a part of the solution. So how do you help the world's least developed countries to take advantage of technology and to deliver services to their citizens? The potential for digital transformation to deliver support through e-citizen services across health, education and financial services is obviously huge in the developing world. Microsoft's Technology for Social Impact team has been offering to work with the 50 least developed countries around the world to help them think through their digital ambitions, their digital transformation journeys. And I'm personally very proud of the work that KPMG's been doing to support that from a project management perspective, helping governments to better understand the current state of their technology, to identify the critical needs, and to build a roadmap to a digitally enabled future. And of course, we're extremely proud of this work and its direct contribution to many of the SDGs, perhaps SDG 9, which focuses on industry, innovation, and infrastructure most. My second example is how can you help countries to start realizing their ambitions of universal health coverage? The government of Kazakhstan received a $60 million loan back in 2019. The loan was to help the government to build a universal health system that would fit their needs. At KPMG, we helped the government to model the demographics of an aging population, identify the health risks and diseases most common with that demographic profile, identify the medical interventions that would be needed to curtail some of the most common diseases, and finally, we helped them to design a system of taxation that would pay for those medical interventions. Again, we're very proud of this work and its contribution to SDG 3, which focuses on good health and well-being. My final example is how do you help build resilience in an education system? So in February 2021, the government of India and its state government of Nagaland and the World Bank signed a $68 million loan to enhance the governance of schools across the states. Under this project, KPMG played a lead role in helping to improve and develop a more resilient education system. And the project aims to improve the Nagaland public school education system, reaching 2,000 schools and 150,000 students from kindergarten to year 12, contributing, of course, to SDG 4 quality education. So these are just four examples of the work we do to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. So, George, as I wrap up, I'd like to revisit the call to action you and I discussed yesterday. We're at a very important crossroads, it's been mentioned by pretty much everyone before me, where international development organizations are increasingly looking at bringing the private sector into discussions, are looking for the private sector to bring new solutions to bear, and are looking for the private sector to help speed the pace and scale of change. It's simply too big a task for the UN and the MDBs and the bilateral donors and non-profits to achieve. So I would say look at your existing clients and partners, speak to them about what they're doing to contribute to the agenda, and partner on projects and indeed programs to bring scale to your activities. Thank you.